There certainly was kind of like the economic aspect for, hey, we can create a business, but what also was very, very compelling was that we were providing a service slash product that I actually thought had a really positive outcome and output.
To get things started, I figure we'll just start with, at what point did you sort of stumble on the problem that you guys decided to try to solve? And was it sort of an all-consuming problem that was haunting your days and nights as you tried to figure out how to solve this, or was it just an interest and opportunity that you sort of came across? And we'll start with Amy.
So I co-founded this with my best friend, and she's always been a passionate storyteller. And when I first read her first storybook, it was this inspiring book about instilling this sense of imagination and creativity in young children. And we wondered, we were working in these corporate jobs, and it wasn't really meaningful. I mean, learned a lot, great leadership opportunities, but we really wanted to figure out a way that we could bring this to life and bring that sense of imagination and curiosity in kids around the world. So we ended up having this, desire to solve a problem that we thought, as kids get inundated by be it screen time or what's going on in the market, we just felt like there's an opportunity to really bring creative narratives to inspire children in that sense of wonder and curiosity. So we started Peekapak really with this belief, and as we developed our stories, we recognized, talking to over 300 educators, that we had an opportunity to really fill a problem in the US around how do we bring character education. So things like, how do we teach empathy, perseverance, teamwork, something that's really a problem, not a problem, but an outage or a void in terms of that type of curriculum in the US. And so as we were actually based in the Valley for a bit, we developed, a business around that.
Perfect. And can you just, I don't know if we want to, so Peekapak, can you give a quick one sentence overview in terms of what Peekapak is and what it offers?
Yeah, definitely. So we use technology to distribute our curriculum that works both in the class and the home to teach skills like empathy, self-regulation, perseverance. And we do this through our original stories that really get kids hooked. I just literally got an email from a teacher in New York, and she was like, I've never seen my kids sit so still reading one of your storybooks. It was just, they just were hooked on the learning experience. And so we hope to create these learning experiences that get kids bought in at an early age to be lifelong learners.
Amazing. Bernie?
Sure. So what we do, or what we did as a company, is we helped homeowners find the best residential solar photovoltaic solutions for their homes. The start of our company was over a sushi lunch, and it was what was happening in Ontario with the onset of the Green Energy Act. As part of what we were doing as a province to move into into the era of renewables, was putting in place a feed-in tariff program. So I would say that it started, amongst the co-founders, somewhat as an intellectual kind of, well, how would this work? And could we actually come up with something creative for people to be active participants of this feed-in tariff program without the financial constraints? And we did that by creating Ontario's first free solar offering. So, as a business person that was coming into this, there certainly was kind of like the economic aspect for, hey, we can create a business, but what also was very, very compelling was that we were providing a service slash product that I actually thought had a really positive outcome and output, which would be solar systems.
Perfect. That's great. Daniel?
So for me and for my business at Regenerate, and then eventually ZooShare's launch, it had a lot to do with the same feed-in tariff program existing. It gave us basically an opportunity to chase after for selling the energy that we're going to produce. But for how I got into biogas itself, in essence, I was looking for a job at a certain point when I was kind of disillusioned with the job I had. I was working in finance, writing reports all the time. It was pretty boring. And I went for a job interview to learn about biogas. And I had learned about energy previous to that, and renewables, traditional electricity generation, but biogas at the time wasn't on my radar. It's not really something utilities think about because it's just a couple of megawatts at most, typically. And so I just went for this interview, and doing research and talking to the person across the table from me, I just had this aha moment where I was just kind of like, wait a second, So what I call waste, you take and you make electricity, and then you make fertilizer, and then you don't have any waste of your own. and you could make power 24 hours a day. It doesn't matter what the weather is. It just kind of seemed too perfect for me, and I really wasn't able to shake that. So I eventually just started pursuing it on my own.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, first I want to say thank you for Mars for having me here. We wouldn't be where we are without the support of Mars. When I was in high school, I was actually incredibly bullied and pushed into a very dark place. And so I came to university to be very selfish, and I wanted to make just a ton of money and prove bullies wrong. I was, 17, 18. And so I came to university wanting to be a banker, because I thought, well, that's the easiest way to make lots of money. You see them on TV, look at them, they're rich. And through an amazing opportunity, I spent time in Botswana, and I actually saw abject poverty for the first time up close, and reflected on how selfish my life trajectory was going to be to prove someone wrong who I'd never see again. And so I did a complete 180 and then devoted myself to philanthropy and hunger issues. And then through a lot of experiences, which you might be able to talk about later in this panel, saw that philanthropy has a place in solving some of the world's greatest challenges, but isn't a sustainable solution. And when you look at iron deficiency, which is the world's most common micronutrient issue, which Lucky Iron Fish is trying to address, we need to have a new approach to dealing with it. And so when I found the technology within Lucky Iron Fish, I thought that was a great way of creating a social venture that could solve a world crisis.
Yeah. So Daniel, I think you touched on a good point, Gavin, in terms of finance being, that's where the money is. And Daniel was in finance when you started this, and you decided, yeah, boring, not such a fun job. But you gave up what is, a typical lucrative career in Toronto to sidetrack to entrepreneurship. So was that a scary decision, or were you so disillusioned with that it was easy? Like, how did that thought process work?
Well, it wasn't disillusionment as much as just, I don't know, restlessness, maybe. Yeah. And I didn't really have a highly glamorous job. I was a financial analyst, which ultimately means you read reports all day and you write your own reports all day, and then you hope somebody reads them. And I just wasn't really feeling it when I went back home at the end of the day,
Right.
gratified with the impact I was making on the world or with the work I was doing. And I think I just started to crave more, and I didn't know what it was, and I started to take like the Myers-Briggs test online, and it was like, entrepreneur was the, light that was dinging at me, and like I had said, I was had started to learn about biogas, so I kind of just got some bravery and, listened to the signs that were there, and I went for it, but I actually was a lot like you. When I went to university, I really wanted to work in finance and just make a lot of money. And once I started to work in finance, I was doing okay, but I was just so bored. I needed something else.
Yeah, cool. So do you all think of yourselves as social entrepreneurs? Like, is it a social enterprise you're running? Is that sort of top of mind, or is that sort of just, oh, wait, we're also a social enterprise, but I'm building my business? How does that sort of sit?
It definitely played a role in how we designed the business.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we got into this business because we wanted to have that impact. And so as we designed it, we wanted to be profitable, we wanted to be sustainable and scalable, but we wanted to figure out how do we make this more accessible. And so that was really important, actually, as we were developing, the structure. Like, we're a freemium model. We make it available for anyone, anywhere in the world to use our program. And so that was really important to us. It was a conscious decision. We were like, all these other programs are really expensive. How do we be different? How do we really disrupt this market? And so for us, having the two really sat well with us. We literally had that conversation. We're like, this feels good. Like, this is the direction we want to go in. This is like how we'll get, to reaching our goals as entrepreneurs.
Cool.
I always think that it's an interesting question to ask, what is social entrepreneurship and what is social innovation? And it's a conversation that you hear a lot about online. I'm involved with the organization you said, it's called Center for Social Innovation, and it's a question that permeates through the constituents there. Because it could be done by not-for-profits, it could be done by charities, it could be done by for-profits. And my take on it has always been that it's sort of a thing that, in our case, we had a business that we believed had a positive outcome. And that's like, the war of business is, yes, that's there, but at the end of the day, the final product that was being offered was a way for people to put panels on the rooftops and therefore create clean energy for the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like when I started the company like 7 years ago, more or less, the word social enterprise wasn't so common. I knew that I wanted to involve community members in an investment opportunity. But like you said, I came from the finance world. I went to business school. I didn't learn anything about not-for-profits or co-ops at school. It's really not in the curriculum. And so my intention was to create a profitable project that was a profitable investment opportunity for individuals. It just, when you reframe the exact same thing, it's a social enterprise because it's so inclusive. I wasn't really setting out that way. And I mean, certainly the model that we chose at ZooShare as a not-for-profit co-op was partly, what was kind of the path of least resistance for a project like this. But it certainly wasn't my intention. And the label I was putting on myself every day when I went to work was this is a social venture. It was, we're looking to still, make money here. It's just what do we do with the money that I think makes it more social.
Right. Gavin?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question, and I'm very opinionated about this question. I think that social enterprises is a term, or social enterprise, just the same as social entrepreneur or impact entrepreneur, is a term that is evolving. I am a firm believer that the private sector has a very important role to play in solving some of the world's most greatest challenges. And I think that that doesn't mean your end product has to be directly related to a world problem, but it's the process, how you get there. And so I think an accounting firm, a bank, who is a very standard consumer-based company can still have an impact throughout their business model. And so when I founded Lucky Iron Fish, I made it a commitment that we would have a social impact in every element of how we did business. So the end product is great. It's something that helps people living in developing countries get iron into their diet. But we wanted to have our supply chain be incredibly social through the production, the marketing, even the paper and the thermostats we use in our office. And so that's why we registered to be a B Corp. We're the first B Corp in Guelph. We're one of the top 10 ranked B Corps internationally. And it's because of the process, not just the final product. And so I think that you don't have to be a social business because of the output. It's how you get to the output that makes you social.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So on that point, though, all of the stuff that you guys are working on has a huge benefit to the population. They would be great charities. Did that ever pop into your mind of, I'm just going to start a charity because this is easier, I can get some donations, and that's how I'm going to execute this business? What sort of brought you to the social enterprise or the for-profit or the co-op side instead? So we'll start with Daniel.
I had a look on my face, I think. For me, it was absolutely, I didn't want donations. And it's certainly for the first, period of time, let's say, for the project and its existence, it was almost a trigger for me that people would say, oh, you guys are looking for donations. And I'd be like, no, absolutely not. I got an investment opportunity for you. And that was really important for me, that it wasn't that we were doing something good that people would pat us on the back and say, well, here's some donations. So, for whatever motivation you had for making donations, but it was ultimately that I wanted people to earn something by investing in something good, and that could be a really powerful message. And I mean, originally it didn't work out so easily, but we really wanted people who maybe with their jobs weren't feeling so satisfied with the impact they were making, but they still had a retirement portfolio that they could do something with. And maybe they didn't want to just put it in the index or buy oil and gas stocks. They wanted to make a local renewable energy project that gave them similar returns, but they could go see it and see and feel the impact. So it was absolutely that I didn't want donations. I really wanted people to invest and own a piece of it.
So I don't think in our case, so the quick answer is no. We did not think about starting up a charity. In fact, as I kind of reflect upon it, I don't know if we would have been able to deliver the same sort of results that we did if we were a charity. I think there's something that driven into kind of like this notion of profitability and capitalism that kind of spurs on entrepreneurial creativity and ambition. Not to say that charities aren't, because I've seen some that do some amazing things. But in our particular case, it was kind of like that fire that just drove us to be creative and how we were kind of like sustaining ourselves from the limited resources, that we had.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I would echo that kind of sentiment. Like we both came from business. I had spend time in Vietnam and India kind of like meeting with social entrepreneurs, and I really think there's some magic and some value in a for-profit company building something that has value and impact and can scale that impact. And I think there's that motivation that, you can not only do good, but you could make money at the same time. And I don't think there's any harm in that. I think it's actually makes those entrepreneurs more motivated. So, I mean, it's not easy, but we think it's something that we were really motivated to tackle and bring to market, so.
Awesome. All right, Gavin, let's hear yours.
So when I founded Lucky Iron Fish, I actually really struggled with, do we want to have it as a nonprofit or a for-profit? And when I was actually volunteering in the Dadaab refugee camps in northern Kenya, where I was the most exposed to, I would say, pain and suffering, and where I got the most motivation to try and do something different. But I was incredibly frustrated with the process of the philanthropy that's within that system. And so I think philanthropy is very important in certain aspects of world crises, but all you're doing is spending all this time fundraising for a problem that's just getting worse, and you can barely kind of sustain yourselves, whereas the problem's getting grander and grander. And so when I decided to found Lucky Iron Fish, I wanted to make it for profit so we could take those profits and invest them into the company to sustain our own growth. So we wouldn't be the subject of grant restrictions or donor restrictions. We wouldn't have to spend all the money on the accounting and all the sort of philanthropic hurdles you have to go through. We could just be a straight up for-profit, but a social for-profit where we have an internal commitment of spending the profits on internal growth. Last year, we made $2 million in revenue, and all of that money, none of that went to shareholders. We didn't pay any dividends. We put all of that money back into the company, and we went from 1 country to 66 countries.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, all of that revenue that we've made is going into supporting the company and how we're growing.